What if the US government suddenly told you, pack your bags and leave, or face a $998 fine every single day you stay? That's not fiction. That's the policy now taking shape in America. Under the latest wave of immigration crackdowns backed by Donald Trump, certain nationalities are being pushed to the brink, with deportation orders, court rulings, and financial penalties all tightening at once. From Latin America to South Asia, families are being told their time is up. Some are being offered cash to leave. Others are facing crushing daily fines if they refuse. Here are 10 countries whose citizens just got the loudest message yet: leave. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more engaging content. Number 10. Afghanistan. The clock is ticking for thousands of Afghans still in the U.S. under humanitarian parole. According to The Guardian, Trump-aligned immigration officials have placed Afghanistan at the center of a security-based reassessment. With troop withdrawal memories still fresh and concerns over Taliban vetting resurfacing, DHS is no longer extending protections for many Afghan parolees. Families who fled Kabul in 2021 now face renewed uncertainty. Many worked with the U.S. military and had been promised long-term support. But those assurances are unraveling fast. Even U.S. allies are alarmed. Afghan interpreters and aid workers who once risked their lives for American forces are being lumped into blanket removal categories. Advocacy groups call it a betrayal, but ICE notices are already going out. This is more than a policy pivot. It's a life-altering decision for thousands, and Afghanistan is just the beginning. Number 9. Haiti. The U.S. government is quietly accelerating deportations to Haiti, even as the island spirals deeper into chaos. Multiple sources, including Axios and Reuters, confirm that DHS has resumed mass removals of Haitian nationals, citing internal security concerns and fears of overstay spikes. For families who came seeking asylum after devastating earthquakes, gang violence, and political collapse, this marks a devastating shift in policy. Deportation flights, which were once sporadic, have now become routine, signaling a clear intent to remove as many individuals as possible, and quickly. Haitian communities across Florida, New York, and Massachusetts are reporting a wave of notices to appear. Immigration lawyers say the backlog is being fast-tracked, with little warning or recourse. Legal aid centers are overwhelmed, trying to respond to sudden court dates and ICE detentions. Children born in the U.S. are watching their parents dragged into custody, creating a new wave of fear and uncertainty in classrooms and neighborhoods. In Port-au-Prince, there are no guarantees of safety. Gangs control key transportation routes, schools are shuttered, and hospitals lack supplies. The government is barely functioning, and international aid has been inconsistent at best. Yet the deportation flights continue, often under the cover of night, with many arrivals simply disappearing into chaos. Even faith-based organizations and humanitarian groups have pleaded for a pause, warning that forced returns could become death sentences. But so far, Washington isn't listening. Instead, DHS is doubling down, with more charter flights and fewer exceptions. For Haitians in the U.S., this isn't just a policy change, it's an existential crisis. And for many, there's nowhere safe to go. They are being forced out of relative safety and into the heart of a humanitarian disaster. Number 8. Nicaragua. Nicaraguans in the U.S. just became one of the top targets in Trump's intensifying mass removal campaign. According to Politico, the administration has reclassified Nicaragua as a non-cooperative state in deportation negotiations, clearing the path for unilateral removals without bilateral agreements. Temporary protections are being quietly denied or allowed to expire, and parole renewals are stalling across multiple immigration offices. This shift affects not only recent arrivals, but also long-term residents who had relied on rolling extensions for years. Thousands of asylum seekers who fled political violence, Ortega's crackdowns, and police state repression are now facing the threat of forced return. Some are being offered small cash incentives to leave voluntarily, but others are being hit with harsh threats, including the looming $998 per day overstay fine authorized by DHS. The policy, critics say, is coercive and punishes people already living in fear. Deportation flights to Managua are increasing in frequency, with little coordination, few media reports, and virtually no public transparency. Immigration courts in Texas and Florida are being instructed to prioritize Nicaraguan cases, and judges are under pressure to expedite rulings. Families are receiving removal dates within days of their initial hearings. Community advocates warn that these tactics are creating panic in Nicaraguan neighborhoods across Miami, Houston, and Los Angeles. Parents are pulling children from school. Some are fleeing to other states or going underground. The fear is real and spreading. The message is chilling. Stay and pay or leave now. For a country already scarred by authoritarianism and political trauma, the U.S. is no longer offering refuge, only a deadline. And for those who overstayed by mere months, the consequences could be life-altering. Number 7. El Salvador. El Salvador, once one of the most common countries of origin for migrants under temporary protected status, is now firmly in Washington's crosshairs. After years of limbo and short-term TPS extensions, the Trump administration is moving toward a decisive cutoff. According to the Washington Post, DHS plans to officially end protections for Salvadorans in 2025, citing so-called improvements in domestic conditions, a claim that's being roundly criticized by human rights observers and legal advocates. Those improvements, many argue, are largely cosmetic and fail to address the realities of everyday violence and institutional breakdown. Salvadoran families who've built lives in the U.S. for decades are now being told their time is up. They've raised American children, started small businesses, contributed to local economies, and now face the possibility of abrupt separation and forced return. Entire communities in Los Angeles, Houston, and Long Island are bracing for what could become one of the largest mass removals in modern U.S. immigration history. The Salvadoran government, already struggling with fragile institutions and budget shortfalls, has admitted it does not have the infrastructure to absorb a large influx of returnees. Gang violence, while somewhat reduced in recent years, remains a dominant threat, and access to healthcare, jobs, and housing is still woefully inadequate. Despite this, deportation flights are increasing, and immigration courts are fast-tracking cases with few opportunities for reprieve. In some neighborhoods, families are preparing for the worst, stockpiling documents, drafting emergency guardianship papers, and avoiding public places to reduce the risk of arrest. Legal aid clinics are overwhelmed, trying to process urgent filings before removal orders are executed. With little room for appeals and zero new TPS renewals, many are running out of time. For tens of thousands of Salvadorans, the clock is ticking, and the United States is no longer offering lifelines. The country that once gave them refuge is now sending them back to uncertainty, danger, and despair. Number 6. Venezuela. In one of the most controversial rulings of the year, the Supreme Court sided with the Trump administration in allowing mass deportations of Venezuelans. As reported by the Associated Press and Washington Post, the decision ends federal protections for nearly 300,000 Venezuelans who had been living in the U.S. under temporary protected status, TPS. This reversal comes at a time when Venezuela's political and economic crisis remains unresolved, with inflation skyrocketing and basic services crumbling. Many of these individuals fled repression and economic collapse under the Maduro regime. They've been living in the U.S. legally, working and paying taxes. Now they're being told to leave or face steep daily fines of nearly $1,000. The decision has sparked protests in Miami and Washington, with immigrant rights groups calling it a humanitarian failure. DHS is pushing forward regardless, and removal proceedings have already begun in states like Florida and New Jersey. Venezuela's collapse is far from over, but for thousands living in the U.S., the escape hatch just slammed shut. Number 5. Honduras. Hondurans in the U.S. are being swept into the largest deportation wave since 2018. Following directives laid out in Axios and Politico reporting, DHS is aggressively pursuing the removal of Honduran nationals, especially those with denied asylum or expired parole. Notices to appear are spiking in Houston, Miami, and Los Angeles. For many, these are families who arrived after devastating hurricanes and gang threats. They've lived quietly, worked low-wage jobs, and kept a low profile. But in 2025, that's no longer enough. The U.S. is now offering small cash incentives for voluntary departure, a strategy outlined in Politico, while simultaneously threatening $9.98 hours-day fines for those who stay past removal deadlines. Immigration courts are being directed to prioritize Honduran cases for rapid adjudication. Back home, Honduras continues to struggle with cartel violence, unemployment, and corruption. But that's no longer considered a valid reason to stay. For tens of thousands, the countdown has begun. Number 4. Cuba. The pressure on Cuban migrants is intensifying, and fast. As U.S.-Cuba relations remain tense, DHS has quietly resumed deportation flights after years of diplomatic gridlock. According to the Economic Times and Reuters, the Trump administration has designated Cuba as a high-priority removal zone, particularly for recent border crossers. Many Cubans fled state repression and feared arrest if returned. But under the latest policy shift, those who arrived after a specific cutoff date are now being denied asylum en masse. Legal advocates say due process is being sidelined. In Miami, where Cuban-American communities are large and politically vocal, the atmosphere is tense. Families are being torn apart. Children with U.S. citizenship are watching their parents hauled into ICE detention. For a population long associated with America's promise of refuge, the reversal is jarring. Trump's order sends a clear message. Exile no longer guarantees safety, even for Cubans. Number 3. Mexico. Mexico isn't just a neighbor. It's now the epicenter of Trump's new deportation blueprint. According to Axios and the Economic Times, Trump's DHS has issued sweeping orders for the rapid removal of Mexican nationals, even those with deep ties to U.S. communities. Border states like Texas and Arizona are reporting a surge in ICE activity, with workplace raids and roadside checkpoints making a comeback. The administration is also using financial levers, offering modest self-deportation stipends while slapping overstayers with $998 per day fines. For undocumented workers and mixed-status families, the pressure is suffocating. Some are fleeing inland, while others are simply disappearing off the grid. Meanwhile, Mexico is pushing back diplomatically, warning that mass expulsions could destabilize communities already strained by cartel violence and economic hardship. But so far, the U.S. isn't backing down. This isn't just immigration enforcement. It's an economic and social shockwave for both sides of the border, and it's accelerating fast. Number 2. Guatemala. Guatemalan migrants are being caught in one of the harshest crackdowns to date. Per reports from the Washington Post and AP, Guatemalans under pending asylum or expired parole are receiving accelerated removal notices at record speed. Court dockets in Chicago, Houston, and Atlanta are being stuffed with Guatemalan cases, often with hearings scheduled just days apart. Many of these individuals came fleeing endemic poverty, gang threats, or climate-driven crop failure. But DHS has reclassified Guatemala as a stable repatriation zone, allowing mass returns with limited review. The result? Detention centers are filling up. Human rights groups are warning of family separations, and legal aid clinics are overwhelmed trying to file last-minute motions for relief. In 2025, staying means risking detention, but leaving means returning to a country many barely survived the first time. For Guatemalans, the window is closing, and fast. Number 1. India. In a shocking twist, India now finds itself at the top of the list, not because of border crossings, but due to the massive backlog of expired visas and work permits. According to the Economic Times and Politico, Indian nationals who overstayed F1, H1B, and visitor visas are being swept into the Trump administration's deportation dragnet. ICE agents are reportedly targeting tech workers and former students in major hubs like San Jose, Dallas, and Chicago. Many of these individuals came legally, built careers, and waited years for green cards. Now their status is being retroactively challenged. Thousands have received notices to appear, and some are already in removal proceedings. India's government has expressed concern, citing the economic and human toll of losing skilled workers. But U.S. immigration officials say that overstays, even among high-skilled migrants, will no longer be tolerated. This represents a seismic shift in deportation policy, and a warning shot to anyone assuming that legal entry means long-term security. From Venezuela to India, the message is unmistakable. If you're not on solid legal ground, your time in the U.S. could be running out. The new wave of Trump-era enforcement doesn't just target undocumented border crossers. It's sweeping through student dorms, tech campuses, refugee shelters, and suburban neighborhoods. It uses both carrot and stick, cash incentives for voluntary departure, and steep fines for those who stay. These 10 countries are just the beginning. With court rulings and executive orders accelerating removals, millions could be affected in the months ahead. If you learned something new today, or if your community is being impacted, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more breaking updates from across the globe. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.